Blue Beetle is a superhero movie whose entire plot literally starts because a whiny girl wants to take a massive dump in a rich person's nice toilet. Need I say more? Okay, seriously, Blue Beetle is an okay superhero flick, which is definitely better than I thought it would be after watching the trailers. However, despite it not being the worst thing to come out of the DCEU, which, let's admit, is a pretty low bar to set, it still is one of the more forgettable superhero movies that I have watched. It doesn't leave a lasting impression on the audience, and today I wanted to quickly break down why that is the case. To do this, I'm going to organize my analysis into three distinct categories: checking the boxes, lack of definition, and plot drives protagonist. Before I get into the breakdown though, a few things. I would really appreciate it if you left a like, subscribed, and help me get to my goal of 10,000 subs before the end of the year. Also, feel free to let me know why you agreed or disagreed with my analysis in the comments below. Aside from that, and this should be obvious, but spoiler warning is going to be in effect, so just know that there are some minor spoilers ahead. Alright, with all of that out of the way, let's get into why Blue Beetle is such a forgettable movie. This first category might be the most important one in terms of making a movie forgettable. Blue Beetle basically does what almost every other superhero movie before it has done. It follows a formulaic plot structure with cliche story beats that can be seen coming a mile away. In other words, it checks every box that we would expect from a modern day superhero film. Constant humor? Check. Large evil technologically advanced corporation? Check. Love interest that falls for the hero at the end of the movie? Check. Tons of mid to poor CGI? Check. Retractable mask so we can see the main character's face when they're in costume? Check. Although the names and the specifics of certain aspects may be slightly different, it is more or less the same as any other bland superhero movie to come out these days. I will say that the Latino family dynamic was well done and provided something slightly different than the superhero norm, but ultimately it wasn't enough for me to keep this film from feeling bland. But Ghost Toast, you may say. Blue Beetle doesn't necessarily have to do anything different or extremely unique in order to be enjoyable or a good movie. It can just follow the same story structure and still be different enough. And yeah, you are right in saying that. Just because it follows a very similar plot structure to most other superhero movies, that doesn't automatically mean that it's a bad movie. It can follow those same story beats in a unique and exciting way. But unfortunately, Blue Beetle just doesn't do that. The way it goes about telling its story feels like it's almost the same as every other superhero film. It doesn't use its unique premise to tell a story in a unique way. I will get more into this in the next section of the video, but for now, let me put it this way. In the game Smash Ultimate, there are Echo Fighters like Peach and Daisy. Even though their moves are called different names and have slightly different colors and animations to them, they are still essentially the same. There is not enough to make them unique from one another. However, there are also characters in Smash Ultimate that belong to the same archetype, but are significantly different from each other. For example, Marth and Roy are similar to each other. They both have many of the same types of moves, but each one has some moves that are unique to them, as well as having different properties to their characters, such as Roy's attacks doing more damage the closer to the hilt of the sword, whereas Marth does more damage with the tip of his sword. These differences are enough to make each one function significantly different from the other one, and thus makes them unique from one another. This is the type of similar but different storytelling that Blue Beetle fails at. If every other superhero movie is Peach, then Blue Beetle is Daisy. It may visually look different and have slight differences, but those differences don't make it unique enough to not just be considered another superhero movie and thereby forgettable. Have you ever heard the phrase, a whole bunch of nothing? If you have, then you probably understand the gist of this category. When people use that phrase, they don't literally mean nothing, since if it was nothing, then there couldn't be a whole bunch of it. Rather, people use that phrase to describe something that seems like a lot, but in reality is just empty and amounts to nothing. And that phrase can be perfectly applied to Blue Beetle. Initially, it may seem like there is a lot going on in this movie, and there is, but almost none of it holds the type of memorable and impactful weight that it should have, and that is due to the fact that there is no solid definition to a lot of the elements in the film. Allow me to provide some brief examples. We know that there is this scarab that supposedly possesses a host and gives them great powers, but because we don't know anything about why the scarab lands on Earth or what kinds of powers powers it gives, or what weaknesses it has and how it affects its host, it just becomes an empty shell of CGI that is not particularly distinguishable from any other superhero CGI MacGuffin. We don't understand it enough. We know Cord is this giant tech company that makes weapons and is evil, but because we don't have any sequences early on of people being directly affected by Cord or their weapons in action, then Cord becomes just another giant evil tech company that makes weapons just like every other superhero movie has. We know that Jaime's family has been through a lot, and some of the struggles they face help define each member of the family, but because we never see any of these struggles, like losing the workshop, or Jaime's father's first heart attack, or having to cross the border illegally and working extremely hard to make a better life for the next generation, all of these struggles might as well be any old hardships found in any other superhero origin story. All of these problems I just listed can be attributed to not following one of the fundamental principles of filmmaking that I've talked about in previous reviews. Show, don't tell. In order to give definition to the elements of the world of your film, you need to show it to the audience, not tell them about it. Instead of telling us that the scarab gives powers and explaining at the end of the film that it can form anything you can conjure, show us an example of Jaime accidentally forming something he thought of, and in doing so, he slowly figures out that he can make any weapon he can think of, which establishes that as a definable rule to his powers, and therefore gives the audience something to hold on to. Instead of having people tell us how awful Cord is and all the bad things they have done, show us a scene where Cord uses some of its weapons to clear out civilians who didn't want to leave their homes in a territory that the company wanted to expand on. That way, you show the audience how this enemy is unique from every other evil giant tech company in a superhero movie, that they use their power to forcefully relocate those in the lower class, which is a specific attribute that would be unique to this movie's version of the evil giant tech corporation. Don't tell us Jaime's family is going through all these hardships. Show us a flashback or a montage at the beginning of his parents and uncle crossing the border and working hard in order to show the audience why the specific struggles that his family faces are unique from the hardships found in every other superhero movie. Showing us why your movie is unique and not just verbally saying it is exactly how to give the elements of your film more definition, and those defining traits are what helps your film stand out from other superhero movies even if it follows the same beats. In other words, showing those defining traits is what could have made Blue Beetle Roy if the rest of the generic superhero movies were Marth. Generally, there are two types of movie protagonists: bus drivers and bus riders. A bus driver protagonist will be proactive, and through their actions, the rest of the film's plot will get driven forward. Essentially, a bus driver protagonist is the driving force of the film. On the other hand, a bus rider protagonist will often just be an affected party of the events of the film. Things will happen to them instead of because of them. They will be led to the next point instead of leading to the next point. They will be spoon-fed information instead of searching for and finding information. A bus rider protagonist doesn't drive the film forward, but is more so just along for the ride. As you could probably guess, Jaime is a bus rider protagonist. His sister leads him into the mansion where he overhears the argument between Jennifer and fake Hillary Clinton. He does become a proactive protagonist one time when he steps in on Jennifer's behalf, but then from that point on, he is just along for the ride. He is given the scarab takes him to different places, the scarab literally fights for him, Jennifer takes him to her father's old mansion, he is captured by Cord and taken to the research facility, he is freed by his family. You get the gist. Although there are moments where Jaime takes some initiative in the film, for the most part, he is not the driving force of the movie, which makes the titular character of Blue Beetle more forgettable. If Jaime was the one who was making things happen in the movie, intentionally taking the scarab, going to different places on his own accord, learning to fight his own battles, then all of the plot's progression would have been facilitated by him, and would have given his character, mind you the main character that the movie is named after, more memorability and uniqueness, since he would have been the driving force of the film. His unique attributes would be what drives the film forward. However, how the film is currently constructed leaves Jaime in a position where it could have been anybody who got thrusted into the story, and the story would have still turned out relatively the same. Almost none of Jaime's defining attributes lead to plot progression, which makes each of those unique attributes less memorable. Now, some of you may may argue that it's okay for a superhero movie to be about how anyone can be the hero, thereby justifying all of the things I just criticized. And to that I say, yeah, that's true. But the lack of uniqueness and definition covered in the previous two categories of this video give you a lot less room to include a protagonist who can be anybody and yet still keep your film memorable. So taking the rest of the forgettability into account, it doesn't really seem like a good idea to star a bus riding protagonist in your movie when a bus driving protagonist could have added much more unique memorability. At the end of the day, I don't think Blue Beetle was a bad movie. It almost falls into that category for me, but not quite. There were a few positive aspects of this film, like for example, the cinematography was pretty cool. However, it ultimately did not do enough to stand out from the middle of the pack, and I hope today I showed you all why I feel that way. But what did you think? Let me know what you thought of the film or my review in the comments, and if you like DC movies, then maybe you'll enjoy my breakdown of why Black Adam didn't work as a film. Link to that video will be in the description. If you did enjoy my review, then please leave a like and subscribe and turn on that bell to stay notified for whenever I drop a new video. Anyways, that's pretty much all I got for today. I'll catch you all on the next one. Have a great day.